So, finding that place for yourself where you can be most relaxed. And it doesn't have to look like a yoga pose. So, as we come to our mat, as we're resting in any way that we would like to, the idea is that we're trying to find a space for ourselves where we feel muscularly soft, where we're trying to release muscle tension. And that's why the invitation at the beginning of class is just to find a space for yourself. Never has to look like a yoga pose. And sometimes I tell folks, if you're new to yin and you're not quite sure what that looks like, think about how you would rest in bed right before you're ready to fall asleep. That's usually for many of us a space of ease. And as you're settling into that space of ease, give yourself that nice deep inhale and that longer exhale, the opportunity to settle into the weight of the body. And if those breaths are helpful, do several of those. That deep inhale, that longer exhale. It's something we can take through our practice today if it feels beneficial to you. And as we're settling in, we might take note of what's around us in the room, noticing any sounds, any sights if our eyes are open, orienting ourselves to the space that we're resting in. And then, if we can, we begin to turn our gaze inward. There may be sensation that's gaining your notice in the physical body. You may be a person who works their way methodically through that body, checking in from the feet all the way to the top of the head to notice if there's sensation in a particular area. It's possible there's not a lot of sensation in your notice today. And so we allow ourselves to just simply be with that, noticing what is in your notice. We try to notice those sensations with curiosity, asking ourselves maybe questions about those sensations that we might ask a friend, trying to leave the story out of it. So the whys, the hows, the what ifs, or what should haves, we're going to leave that alone for an hour and simply be aware, if we can, and notice with that sense of curiosity. So spending a few moments here, bringing awareness to that physical body, to sensation, or awareness of what is for you today. And I'm going to instruct you today through a little bit of noticing opposites. And we're going to start with just simply the physical body. So, for this moment, if it's helpful again to you, notice your left leg, noticing your left leg from the sole of the foot, the shin, the knee, and the thigh. And then we'll shift that awareness to your right leg, noticing your right leg from the sole of the foot through the shin, the knee, and the thigh. And moving awareness or noticing back and forth, noticing left leg and then right leg. Maybe it's simply naming them, left leg and right leg. And then bringing awareness to the left arm, all the way from the fingers through the palm, that lower arm, elbow, upper arm. And then noticing your right arm from the fingers through the palms, that lower arm, elbow, and upper arm. Shifting that noticing back and forth, left arm and right arm. And then noticing the front of the torso, from the bottom of the pelvis to the belly, the space of the heart, and up through those collarbones. An awareness of the back of the torso, from the back side of the pelvis, the sacrum, to the low back, the back rib cage, the space of the back of the heart, and shoulder blades. And shifting awareness from the front side of the torso to the back side of the torso. And then finally, we notice the face and the back of the skull. So the face, noticing chin, mouth, nose, include those ears, eyes, and forehead. And then bringing the notice to the back space of the face. So maybe it's internal in that brain area. Maybe it's a physical sensation on the back of your skull. And shifting awareness from the front of the head to the back of the head. Take a moment to become aware of your entire body. The left and right legs, the left and right arms, the front and back of the torso, the face and the back of the skull. Becoming aware of the entire body as it's resting here, allowing your awareness to travel to sensation if it's present. This opportunity to really tune into the physical body. It's one of the ways we can remain present. The exercise I just took you through a bit of a guided meditation of noticing and just allowing that notice to travel as we go through our practice today. Perhaps that feels useful to you to help you remain present when we're in the stillness of these poses. When you're ready, take that nice deep inhale, that longer exhale, and start to bring a little movement into the body. Maybe wiggling. It might feel good to stretch depending on how you're resting. We're going to shift into a seated position to find our first pose today. So take your time, be kind. We've been on that back for a bit here. We are going to be moving through our dragon pose. So we're going to be opening up the front of those thighs. So I'm going to ask you as you're coming into seated, we're going to come to tabletop. Now, if you happen to have yoga blocks handy, you might use yoga blocks here. Otherwise, I'll have some opportunities to change some things out. We're going to take our right leg forward first. So our right foot comes forward and our back leg is going to walk back just a little bit. There's going to be lots of places where we may rest. 3 minutes, that might be good news for us today. Not the full 5, but we'll go 3 minutes. We'll bring hands either to the front of the thigh, especially if it's hard to get down to the floor and mostly due to compression in the front of the thigh. We might frame the leg with our hands. There may be some of us who have hands inside the leg. There may be a few of you who come down to elbows. What we're looking for here is an opportunity to open up the front of that left thigh. Now, we may also experience in the back of the right thigh or in the crease of that right thigh. There's lots of places we may feel this. Our dragons are really meant to open up not just the front side of that leg, so the quadriceps and the connective tissue associated with the quads. But we're also focused on releasing the back. So physically, there is a connection between the front crease of your thigh and that low back. It's a muscle. So as that connects into those low lumbar vertebrae. So this is one of the poses I often offer to people who are experiencing low back pain. I love this pose too for the activities a lot of us choose to do. So if we're cyclists, if we're runners, if we're hikers, these fronts of the thighs are getting overused, and often we have an imbalance between the use of the front and back of the thigh. So it's an opportunity physically to help stretch and open muscle, which will happen in about a minute. But then we're getting to the deeper stuff. We're getting to that connective tissue interwoven through those muscles, tendon closest to the bone that holds muscle to bone, and then down to the bones and ligaments that are holding those together. This practice is about mobility. So as we are aging, we're losing some of that mobility because our connective tissue is getting tighter and shorter and drying up. This practice offers us an opportunity to make it more pliable, to increase mobility in really all aspects in the body, in joints, mobility of muscle, and an opportunity to move with more balance in the body. The good news is this may feel challenging. Not all of our yin poses are going to feel this challenging. If at any point you're in a pose and it feels like it's leading to pain, it's a good signal that we want to release the pose. It's a messenger, and we want to listen to it. So no pose here today should feel painful. Now, what might be happening for you or arising for you is a sense of discomfort. And only you know if that sense of discomfort is going to lead to release or if that sense of discomfort is leading to pain. So we're listening for that message in the body as well. A few deep inhales, longer exhales can help you settle into the weight of the pose. An opportunity to release more muscle tension, which is really one of the tenets of our Yin Yoga practice, to try to remain without muscle tension. When you're ready, we're going to slowly shift that weight to that back knee. And things might feel a little bit stuck. We'll bring the knees back towards each other. Anything you might need here to wiggle to find some release, including through shoulders, arms, and wrists. So take a moment to wiggle around. We're going to move to that other side. So it's the left side that comes forward now. Try to get that knee right above the ankle. We're going to slide this back leg back so we got that sense of opening and stretch. Once again, we may find ourselves resting with hands on knees. We might have hands on the floor. Some of us might have hands, palms, fists are a nice way to protect that wrist. And a few of you might be down on elbows. So as you're settling into the pose, we're going to return to a little bit of this idea of how we began class and noticing sides. So give yourself a moment to settle in. And then we bring awareness back to the sides. How does this side feel compared to the other when you came into the pose? If there's not a lot that is in your awareness or notice, that's okay. We can return to this other skill of checking in. So if noticing one side and the other isn't helpful today, we can also practice the skill of noticing, where are we sensing this particular pose? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's going to be different for everybody. Some places that you might check in are in the front of that thigh, in the back of the thigh of the bent knee, and the crease of that thigh of the bent knee. Might even check in with neck and shoulders. We're trying to release that area as much as possible while it's still supporting us, so we do have some muscle firing here. Building the skill of awareness of sensation. One of those first steps that leads to maybe deeper meditative practice, or I often say this, an opportunity simply to respond to the body in the moment. It's always giving us information. It's sending us information about what we might need to change, what we might need to remain the same. It's allowing us to have a conversation, an opportunity to respond to what is existing in the moment. Once again, that deeper inhale, that longer exhale can be helpful into settling into the pose. We're giving a signal to our central nervous system that we would like to relax a little bit. Try not to hold on to tension. And there are some new folks on here. And just as a reminder to those who have been practicing for a while, there will be periods of silence during our yen practice. And it is for this reason we've just been practicing to notice, maybe shift notice from right to left, to notice sensation, maybe notice what's coming up for you. If it's the thinking mind, if it's the emotional body, an opportunity to tune in without having to listen to my chatter. When you're ready, we're going to shift that weight to that back knee. Give yourself an opportunity to release and wiggle in any way that you would like. We'll all meet in a seated position, but there is no rush to get there. So when you're ready, coming back to your seat that's comfortable to you. We're going to do one more one-sided opportunity here. Usually I go into something where we're doing the same thing with both legs and both hips and arms. Here we're going to move into some choices. So this is going to be about opening your IT band. And we're going to do it in a little bit of a different way. There are going to be several of us who are resting on our back. And if you know where you're headed, go for it. You don't have to wait on me. If you have a hip structure where we've got knees that are a little bit higher than the hips, if you have blocks or a blanket or a towel, place your buns on those towels. We're going to bring our right leg into one of three positions: seated or a position resting on your back. So our choices are, first one, for the leg to be on the outside of that opposite shin. So my right leg would be on the outside. I might be able to bring my foot up to rest on my thigh. And we do want to be careful here. So if it tucks in and you get this sort of bending up of your toes, we're really overstretching ligaments that we don't want to overstretch. So we want to be sure we have that straight foot. That might be an opportunity. There are going to be some of us, and it'll be a little hard to see because I'm in black, but who have knees one stacked on top of the other in shoelace pose. If you're in one of these poses, we're going to go into a forward fold. If that is really challenging because of how your bones are put together in your hips, we're going to rest on our backs. We cross that, pardon me, right ankle. We might leave the foot on. We might be able to draw that knee in a little bit closer. Any space here that works for your hip structure. If we are in a seated position, one of the things we're looking for is our ship that is listing. So if you've come to a space that makes you lean over to one bun cheek or the other, we probably need to go down a level. So foot in front, foot on top, shoelace, or resting on your back. This opening of the IT band, iliotibial band, super fussy area for a lot of us. We may be experiencing this on that line of the IT, which is from the knee to the hip, or that bony protuberance of the hip. We may be experiencing in the bun cheek. So this is a piriformis opener, that muscle that goes around our sciatic nerve. So this is a great opener for if we are working with any sciatica that's coming from the piriformis. It's possible we're experiencing it in other places. So I often talk about where we're maybe expanding is a good word. What are we trying not necessarily to stretch, but make more pliable and expand? That's the outside of the hip and the bun. There's a whole other element to our yin practice called compression. And we're compressing tissue. Right now, we may feel it in the inner groin area, in the back of the knee area, in the front side of the body, in that forward fold. That's all, that too is compression. And this compression is an idea of squeezing tissue, but then when we release it, it's like a sponge filling up with water. All the new good stuff rushes into that area. So maybe we're wringing out or squeezing out the old and inviting the new. Take a moment to tune into breath and to notice. As you're inhaling, where do you feel the breath expand? As you're exhaling, is there a sense of ease or release? Inhaling into expansion, exhaling into ease or release. Breath is one of the ways not only do we calm the central nervous system, it's a way we can tell the body we're not in an emergency response. Sometimes when we get into a deep stretch, the body is geared to tighten another area to keep us from pulling a muscle. And so when we're breathing with this awareness, when we are breathing with this idea into expansion and ease, we're suggesting to the brain that it's okay to allow us to be in this space. There's no need to fire a response or an opposite set of muscles to tighten in order to protect us. This practice is really about stillness. And in that stillness, muscle tension can release. And as that muscle tension releases, we find more expansion in connective tissue. Maybe it's helpful to notice sensation in this right side leg, just to make note of how it's feeling, because we'll be comparing sides. This may be a pose too where sensation travels. So maybe we experienced it in one particular area at the beginning of the pose. The longer we go, that sensation travels. And that's usually really tight connective tissue that's becoming more pliable. So we go on to the next spot where it's tight and becomes more pliable. Finding space for expansion. No matter where you're at, we're going to begin to release the pose. We'll restack that spine. If you're resting on your back, you might stretch the legs nice and long. An opportunity to come out of it however you need to. Maybe a little windshield wiper legs, a little bouncing knees. You might need some opening through the space of the front of the heart. What's important here is our sides now do not have to match because they don't match. Our bones don't come together the same way on each side, and our muscles are tight on one side or tighter on one side. So know that you can make adjustments here. You may have done one pose that now you need to transition to your back, or you may come up into a seated position. We are going to move to the left side. So that left leg is either on the outside, stacking without bending through that ankle. So a nice straight, flat ankle, or the knee, one knee on top of the other. Again, we may be resting on our back. This time, the left ankle is crossing over the top of the right thigh. Folding forward into a space if you're in a seated position that is tolerable for you. Breathing into release. Maybe it's a nice deep inhale and a longer exhale. Maybe it's simply sensing that breath. I breathe into expansion. I exhale into ease. Observing this side and noticing how this side might feel compared to the other side. There may be similarities, there may be differences. I often suggest this idea of felt sense. Sometimes we have words for how things feel. Sometimes we have a description that comes to us immediately. And sometimes there just really aren't words. We sense and feel something in the body that doesn't really have a description. We call that your felt sense. It's a knowing in the body. And as we move through, pardon me, our yen practice and the process of yen, we might find that felt sense sends a lot more messages that we're noticing. It's this uncovering of the layers, this reintegration, really, of what it's like to be one with the body. Our thinking mind gets a chance to take a break, and we return to what sometimes we might call intuition. That gut feeling is a felt sense, this communication between the body and the brain. That is helpful in all kinds of ways. Messages that suggest change in the body, messages that might even suggest remaining in place, tuning back into the body's wisdom can help us adjust everything. Maybe it's simply adjusting how we feel in our seat when we're seated at a desk. Maybe it's adjusting our activities, the athletics we do outside of our work, the play that we choose. It's also worth noticing if your mind is wandering. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes in yoga, we emphasize staying present and remaining in this moment. And yes, those are good things. But sometimes when the mind is wandering, it might be because we're releasing things. It might be because we are finding our way through this deep, dense material of the brain and something is ready to let go. So it's worth observing if the mind is wandering and maybe what it's wandering to. There's value in that as well. The message we may get from that wandering brain, if it's starting to be what is called that monkey mind, where it's starting to cycle in the same sort of thoughts. Yoga and this particular practice can be helpful to slow that cycling down. That's when we do come back to the physical body, when we do start to notice what is happening in that physical body. That will quiet the monkey mind and will quiet that brain, that thinking brain that may not be helpful to you in this moment. An opportunity to switch, to go to the opposite, where we're tuned into physical. So thinking mind quiets. We're going to begin to slowly come out of the pose. If you are resting on your back, stretch those legs long if that feels good. You're going to meet us eventually in a seated position. For those of us in that seated position, finding your way into what works for you. Give yourself a moment to wiggle around. We're going to be moving now to symmetry. So legs will be doing the same thing, but we are going to have a few choices. So we may go into our dragonfly, and dragonfly is sending those legs wide, coming into a forward fold. Some of us may prefer our bound angle or our butterfly, where the soles of the feet are coming together. Now, they can be fairly far away from you. They can be closer into your core, where we're folding forward. There are going to be some of us where hip structure just doesn't agree to this, especially if we can't get lifted out of our seat on blocks or a blanket. So where we may go is what we call turtle pose, where your knees are bent, soles of the feet are on the floor, and we just allow ourselves to fold forward. Hands can be wherever it makes sense for you in your turtle pose. So we're either in dragonfly, our butterfly, soles of the feet together and folding forward, or our turtle pose, our modified turtle pose, I should say, where we're coming forward. This opening now of that inner thigh area, that inner groin area. Some of us may be experiencing sensation in the back side of the legs. This forward folding continues to release the backside of the body from the back of the skull all the way down to that tailbone, working our way through layers of connective tissue from the skin down to the deepest layers of those ligaments that hold our spine together. Because much of our practice this month has been geared towards finding ways to regulate our central nervous system, to help shift it into that rest, relax, and restore. I always like to mention our forward folds, any forward fold we're doing can be very calming to the central nervous system. We're putting deep pressure on the belly, we're signaling the brain that we would like to relax, and the body relaxes. So, as we're trying to maybe translate our practice out into the world, if you're feeling particularly elevated on a day or in a day, you might pick one forward fold in yoga that inspires more of a relaxation response. If coming into a pose is not necessarily available to you during that moment, we can use the breath. And the breath that we practice to bring more regulation to your central nervous system is that slightly longer exhale. So as you're breathing here, take a few moments, maybe 3 or 4 breaths, to notice the number of beats it takes you to breathe in. When you have an average number of breaths it's taking you to breathe in, or beats, I should say, see if we can extend the exhale by one beat, or perhaps for you, two. A few of you may have been practicing pranayama. You're going to find it naturally extends beyond that one or two beats. So, for instance, if I inhale for 4 beats, I'm going to try to exhale for 5 or 6. For those of us who are new to this breath practice, we keep it to one or two extended beats because we don't want to send our body into the opposite response where we feel out of breath and it feels like we may need to go into an emergency response where the breath becomes quicker and more shallow in that upper chest area. As you progress through this particular breath interval, you'll notice very naturally your exhale becomes even longer. Like all things in the body, we're toning our muscle here, our breath muscle, our diaphragm, and we're building tolerance. So it's a tough order to jump right into, I'm going to breathe this way and I'm going to breathe in this interval. We make it a process if we can, where we're slowly and gradually increasing the amount of time that we exhale until we're in a 2-to-1. So for instance, in that case, if it takes me 4 breaths to breathe in, eventually I try to exhale for 8. Paying very close attention to the response of the body with this breath pattern. If you feel out of breath, your breath has become labored, let the pattern go. Working with breath, that extended exhale, maybe noticing if breath isn't the thing that helps you focus or rest a little more in ease. Maybe noticing physical sensation is the tool that helps calm that central nervous system. All of these ideas given in a way that we then experience them in the body and notice what works for us. Not all of these things work for all of us. There are some things that are very intuitively appealing to us. And so we're noticing that as well. We're going to begin to release the pose. We've been doing a lot of forward folding. If you're feeling like you need to open up, let yourself open up. We're going to be moving into a passive back bend, and we'll have several ways to do that, but we're going to come to rest on our bellies. You may want to have your head near your screen to make it a little easier to view here. So we are coming into this space of counterbalance. We've been forward folding, and so now we're going to offer up a little bit of a back bend. And the first space we might go is our Sphinx pose. And Sphinx is where elbow is right underneath shoulders, hands are resting comfortably, or hands may be helping the head. So I might rest on fists. I might also rest my head in my hands. If this feels very interesting and pinchy or painful in your low back, send your elbows further and rest your head on your forearms. You might find even that feels too interesting on that low back and painful. So you might just simply let the head lower. So we've got some pressure on the belly, an opportunity to relax. Now, in addition to finding this upper body space, we're going to send our feet pretty wide. At least as wide as your mat, as long as that feels comfortable. Some of us are going to go wider based on how our hips are built. The wider those feet go, the harder it is for us to hold tension in our back and our buns. So finding the space here in this passive back bend that works for you. This space of opening through that front side body, very beneficial because we spend a lot of our day rounding forward. And so now we're trying to undo some of that rounding forward. It's also a chance to open up some space, not just for maybe those abdominal connective tissue areas, but the organs themselves. Often being rounded through the front puts a lot of compression on the connective tissue that surrounds our organs and is interwoven through those organs. This gets us an opportunity as that becomes more pliable for our organs to return to their neutral space in that abdominal cavity and even in the heart and lung space. Energetically, our back bends are more energizing. So forward folds calming to the central nervous system, back bends energizing to the central nervous system. And not in the sense that we're going to have 6 cups of coffee and be bouncing off the walls. Not that kind of energy. This is re-energizing the system, making it available for whatever we need to do throughout the day. A sense of maybe an opportunity, I should say, to take some of that energy and apply it out in the world, especially if we're feeling lethargic, if we are feeling unmotivated, and that can be happening during these uncertain times. Back bends can help re-energize, refocus us. And this has more to do with our energetic components in the body and the meridians associated with that. A chance to go out in the world and do things, whatever those things may be for you. Because we're opening that front space, this might be a time to notice the opposites. So we open the back side of the body with our forward folds. We even open the back side of the body if we were resting on the floor. And now to notice sensation in the front side of the body as compared to the back. Shifting awareness from front to back, shifting notice from front to back, if that's something that seems helpful to you. In this space of quietness, exploring sensation, exploring breath, exploring maybe emotions and thoughts. We'll begin to release the pose. That may mean you're simply resting on your belly, bringing forehead onto hands. Our next pose is child's pose. So if you would like to shift back into child's pose and begin a little bit quicker than the rest of us, you're welcome to do that. Find some release here that makes sense for your body. And then as you feel ready, we'll shift back into a couple of versions here. So depending on knees and back and shoulders, child's pose may not feel that relaxing to you. We might be able to bring our hips back towards heels, resting head, or stacking fists if head doesn't rest. It's also possible that we might bring hands down by our side. For several of us, that just isn't where we want to be today because of knees, back, and shoulders. So, shifting to rest on your back, drawing knees into your shoulders can also mimic that child's pose. It's a nice adaptation for anything you might be working with, knees drawing in. Now, we're careful here for drawing knees in. If that strains the neck or makes you lift the head, see if you can grab a pillow from the couch or a blanket or a towel that you might have handy to place under the head to help release that tension. Child's pose or modified or adapted child's pose, this restorative space, this counterbalance moving from front to back. We were just shifting awareness, perhaps in our last pose, from the sensation of the front side of the body compared to the back. If that's helpful to you in this pose, shifting awareness of sensation, the back side of the body to the front side of the body. Breath might be more helpful for you to remain present. You may be coming to a space in your practice after we've been doing this now for about 50 minutes where your body is feeling very relaxed or at ease. Now, that may not be your experience, so that's okay too. But if you're feeling more relaxed, more at ease, you may want to let go of some of this noticing to allow yourself now just to be in that space of ease. That space of ease might be quite mysterious to us right now or feeling inaccessible to us right now in some of these uncertain times. And if we're finding our response is such that we would like to experience that, maybe let go of all of this noticing. Allow yourself to be in ease, perhaps even relaxation. To let the mind and body just soak that up without having to think about it, without having to notice, sense, or be aware of it. It gets to really just be that sponge that soaks up that sense of ease, maybe well being, sense of relaxation. When you are ready, we're going to begin to ease out of the pose, to take your time and shifting here. We're all going to take an opportunity here. You may be resting on your back, you may now be in a seated position to find a pose that might be appealing to you. Now, I know I have some new folks on, so I'm going to suggest a few things. But during our practice, sometimes we wish, oh man, I wish you would have done that one, or my body could really use this one today. So, if there is a pose that you are wanting to do, here is your opportunity, making the choice to do that for yourself. For those of us who may be new and not necessarily knowing what pose might be available to us, my suggestion to you would be to go into constructive rest pose. It's not necessarily an official yin pose, but it is a nice pose to reset that spine and to relax the pelvis. So, if you don't have a favorite or a pose that your body's asking for today, resting in constructive rest pose where the feet are wide, our knees are bent, and then our knees drop towards each other with ease. So, if there's no particular space that that needs to be, we're just letting those knees drop towards each other. If it doesn't feel like it builds tension for you, we might cross those arms over the front of the heart. Now, if that feels tension building to you, you might just simply place the hands wherever it makes sense, overhead, out into a T, or hands resting on belly. So we're picking a space or a pose that feels like, oh, my body really wants to do that, or I love that pose. I want to make sure I include it. And if not, if there's not one that comes to mind, we allow ourselves to come into constructive rest pose. This is where we're relying on the body's wisdom to guide us. If you happen to be in a pose where you are doing one side, I'll let you know when we're halfway through. So for instance, if you're in a twist, I'll let you know when we're halfway through and you can shift to the other side. So settling into wherever you have chosen to be. For this last pose of our practice before we relax, we may want to let go of all of the noticing. So if you've been tuning into breath, to sensation, allowing yourself now just to be in this pose with ease. It's an opportunity for the energetic body to sort of settle in as we've released areas. Energy might be traveling into those areas, allowing the body's wisdom to let that energy go where it's needed. Sometimes when we're practicing breath, we're guiding that energy. Sometimes our thoughts are guiding that energy, not purposefully, but that's how the body works. So, resting here, letting go of the noticing of breath and of sensation, and experiencing what I hope for you is a sense of ease. For those of you who are in a one-sided pose, go ahead and shift to the other side. If you are in a pose where legs and arms are doing the same thing, remaining here for the other half of the pose. We are going to begin to release the pose. Give yourself a few moments to wiggle. We're going to be moving into our final relaxation. And I know some of us have to get to work or have other things to do, and we're used to maybe that 10:15 stop time. So if that's the case for you, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. If you're able to stay, we're going to do a body scan today, trying to include that in most classes this week in order to help inspire that relaxation response. So, just one more layer we can add in to regulating that central nervous system. The invitation at the end of class, if you're able to join me here until about 10:30, is to find your way into a space that feels relaxing to you, that brings the most ease into the body in this moment. It does not have to look like a yoga pose, just like we began class. We're finding that space where we can try to be without muscle tension, that space where we can let this maybe hours work really settle into the body. And it settles in with weight and with ease. If you've cooled down, you may want to grab your sweater, a blanket, your socks, getting as comfortable as you can here. Maybe giving yourself those nice deep inhales, those longer exhales to settle into that weight. And if a body scan is new to you, we're really just walking our way through the body, noticing each space and then moving on as I name the other part of the body. Now, there's some real big science going on in the brain behind a body scan. It's a space that we're stimulating in the brain, whether we remain aware or not. Sometimes we get tired and we might even find ourselves falling asleep. It's been shown that those areas of the brain are still stimulated, even though you may be resting either in the yogic sleep or full on sleep. And there's really nothing to do here or to pull yourself out of. So I often hear people say, "Oh, I don't want to fall asleep during relaxation." My theory is, and my philosophy is, gain rest where you can. So if this is the space and the time to gain rest, allow yourself to do that. So as you're finding that comfortable space, letting your awareness travel with the sound of my voice, as we begin to notice the body, and we start by noticing the head, bringing awareness to the mouth, the lips, the teeth, the gums, noticing the tongue, the back of the throat, the inside of the right cheek, and the inside of the left cheek. Bringing awareness to the ears, any sounds your ears may be hearing. Noticing the outer ears with their curves and the earlobes. Bring awareness to the middle and inner ears. Noticing the nose, the in breath and out breath through the left nostril, the in and out breath through the right nostril, the in and out breath through both nostrils. Bringing awareness to the eyes, noticing the eyelids, the eyelashes, the curved surface of the eyes, the center of the eyes, the backs of the eyes. Bring awareness to the space between the brows and the forehead, noticing the top of the head, the back of the head. Noticing the neck as it travels down and through the left shoulder joint. Awareness of that left upper arm and elbow, the forearm, the wrist, the palm, the thumb, and each finger. Tracing awareness back up the left arm over that shoulder joint collarbone area into the right collarbone, the right shoulder joint, the right upper arm and elbow, the forearm, wrist, palm, the thumb, and each finger. Bringing awareness back up the right arm to the shoulder joint and collarbones. Noticing the space of the front of the heart, the rib cage, belly, and front of the pelvis. Noticing the space of the back of the heart, the shoulder blades, the back bottom rib cage, the low back, and the back side of the pelvis. Bringing awareness to the left leg, beginning with the left hip joint, the left thigh, the knee, the shin and the calf, the ankle, the sole of the foot, the left big toe and each toe. Drawing awareness up through that left leg to the left hip joint, across the front of the pelvis to the right hip joint and thigh, the knee, the shin and the calf, the ankle, the sole of the foot, the big toe, and each toe. Drawing awareness back to the space of the front of the heart. From the front of the heart radiates a sense of well-being, a sense of ease through the entire body. Ease and well-being from the head through the arms, the front and back of the torso, pelvis, and legs. Inviting that sense of well-being, that sense of ease to radiate through the entire body, the entire body. Taking a moment here to rest in ease and well-being. Beginning to bring awareness back to the sound of my voice, back to the space that you're resting in. Inviting that deeper inhale, that longer exhale. We begin to reawaken the body, starting by wiggling fingers and toes, circling wrists and ankles. It might feel good to stretch arms overhead. It might feel good to draw knees into chest. In your own way, in your own time, we're going to begin to bring ourselves back into a seated position. Any position that feels comfortable to you. And as we begin to find that comfortable seat, settling in here, take a moment to notice how you're feeling in the physical body, noticing maybe even how you're feeling in the mental and emotional bodies. And if this gesture feels okay to you, we place the palms together, resting thumbs right in front of our heart. May all be well. May all have peace. And may we all be filled with compassion and loving kindness. The light in me is honored and grateful for the light in each of you. I bow to you. Namaste.